that number, like every
Land in a block Gemara. Today's daf is daf Vav Amud Aleph. Today we're going to learn one of the most difficult, most lumbish sugis in Shas called Tok Koyin. Rashach himself wrote a whole sefer on it called Tok Koyin. That's what gives it away. But before we do that, we're discussing if somebody is suspected of being a ganef, can you trust him with a shua? The Gemara says, "Miguda chashed amamoina loy chashed ashluasa," and we brought three proofs that people that we suspected ganav, and yet we make them swear. For example, the whole idea of shvuas hesses, and he denies that he ever owes the money, and make him swear with the rabbanon. Or the case of the storekeeper and the employees, each one says, I didn't do what I didn't get. I did whatever he told me to do. And the other guy didn't give me the money, or the other guy said I did give the money, so they both collect for the balabot. One of them is definitely lying, and yet they swear. Or by a shamer that he says I didn't steal it, and yet yet we make him swear as if we trust him. Okay, says the Gemara, or it's not Bishop, says the Gemara. Abaye disagrees. We're about 10 lines on the top of the page. Abaye says, I hold that migu de choshed amamoina choshid ashvuasa. Yes, choshid ashvuasa. So how come in the Mishnah you swear? Abaye said, because here he's not a choshed amamoina. There's a possibility he's saying the truth. In what way? Abaye says, Haishinan, we are concerned. Shema milva yeshana yesh le'alav. Reuben and Shimon both holding on to maybe Shimon knows that Reuben owes him money from somewhere else, but he has no proof, and Reuben probably forgot. And so he thinks the only way to get paid is if I tell him you owe me money, he'll say nothing at all. He'll deny it, and I'm finished. The only way is, and he can even swear because he doesn't remember. So if I take the talent that he found, I'll get reimbursed. So I'm not really gone. I'm taking what really belongs to me. So Shema milva yishana yeshla. Maybe there's an old nothing to do with Rabbi Yochanan that Rabbi Yochanan said we swear because we're scared that somebody will go and steal. Oh, but if Rabbi said if you're scared he's going to steal, we wouldn't let him swear. But here maybe he's taking it because he thinks he taka owing the money. So the Gemara, if we believe that he owes them, that the only reason people don't steal, they're only doing it because he owes them, then why swear at all? Not that we know for a fact. What he meant was maybe. And therefore, by making him swear, if that's his basis, he's not going to swear false. He's not a ganef. Therefore, we take a risk and we give him a shua. Says the Gemara, so the lava marina. If he is taking money from the suffix here, then Then maybe he owes the money. No, it's not the guy definitely knows he owes the money. Then it's not ganef at all. Then just trust him. But because maybe he owes him money, so he'll be prepared to swear as well. What's the point of making him swear? You tell me the swearing is a deterrent. But if he has a suffix that maybe he owes him money, so he'll swear also knows how to suffix. Amar Rav Sheishis. And you say Migdal Chashem also, so he has no worries, no qualms. Amar Rav Sheva Davidi. Parishi inish mesafik shvua v'loy parish mesafik minor. If I think you might owe me money, I'll go ahead and take the money. And I think to myself, as I'm going to explain, it's my time. A moment, Isa Chazor. If I got it wrong, I'll give it back to him. A day later, a month later, a year later. A shvua you cannot retract. Shvua lesser b'chazor. So you're not going to make anything. No, the bottom line is anything which is irreversible, you're not going to do it unless you know for sure it's for a good thing. Anything which is not irreversible, reversible, yeah. I think probably, so therefore I'll take a gamble. So the obvious question is the same thing by a vadai. If it's a vadai gazan, why don't you say the same thing? Even if it's a vadai gazan, what do you tell me? Just because he's a ganef, he always thinks, well, I can do tshuva. But tshuva can never take back. So the Mishnah already say, once you've established that you're a ganef, then that's not called echte ba'osher. We're not going to say, I'm going to do tshuva. Here, the guy thinks that maybe he's not a ganef at all. But once he's established his credentials that he's a ganef, nothing to talk about. Okay. Now starts the sugya of Takva. Let me ask the following question. What happens if they're in court, they're both holding on a talus and there's a dispute, and then right in front of us, one of the guys grabbed the talus and now he's holding the entire talus in his hand. Now, what's the question? Either shasik, if the other guy stands in and he's silent and I do ugly, doesn't that mean that he's conceding, yes, it's yours? If he's protesting, then what else do you want to do? Start a physical fight? So if Reuben grabs out of Shimon's hand and Shimon screams, "Hey, what are you doing?" What's Reuben grabbing? Help! The twist is meaningless. One second. Yeah, but he should have said something. Remember, there's a dispute here. Reuben says it's mine. Shimon says it's mine. and then Reuben grabs the whole thing, and Shimon just stands there.
Like it.
So we say that in this case here, because he make no protest, and because the behavior, the demeanor of the person tells us whether it's takeh or not. However, this is what your point is. First, he was quiet, and then he yelled out. How do we interpret this behavior? Do we say mid the ishtik? Because he was quiet, it means he concedes. Later on he screamed, because then he woke up and said, hey, why am I giving up so easily? Or the fact that he screamed later tells us why wasn't he screaming from the beginning? Because he thought, I'm standing here in Bezin, they saw. In other words, if this would have happened outside of a Bezin from some witnesses, then if he screamed later, too late. It's after in front of Bezin, this is a dispute. He thinks the Bezin will intervene. And now the big machlekes are showing him exactly when did he scream. We have a suffix. There's actually three opinions. Some say that he had to scream before it was taken out of his hand. If he screamed the moment it was taken out of his hand, it's too late. Other Rishonim say he screamed as soon as it was taken out of his hand. But a minute later, it's too late. And others say as long as he's in front of the bezin, doesn't matter straight away or not, as long as he screams while still standing in bezin, it's our question. The moment he walks out of the door of Bezin and then suddenly he comes back and screams, then it's too late because obviously somebody told him something, or suddenly he realized, hey, what did I just do? Why did you give up so easily? Both come. Both holding on to it. Yes. Yeah, tug of war. Toshma coming here. Said the Braisa Medra, what is name about only the whole din of the vibe of the shore, they're both holding on to it. Abel Hoysa Talus Yoitsa Metachas Shalechim, when one of them had it, and no one has to bring a proof. Now, you need a Bryce to tell you that. If one guy says, I'm holding on to my talus, the other guy says, oh, it's my talus. There's no dispute here. Hey, what are we talking about? Take it literally, isn't it obvious? Ella must be, should talk to Echeb Lefanenu. They both came into court holding on to the talus. And then while they were standing and arguing, one of them yanked it out of the other guy's hand, and now one person's holding on to it. And that's what Rashi tells you, that since you were quiet and then later you screamed, you forfeited any of your rights, and you have to bring a proof now. You were like, no, it doesn't love Dafka. I'll tell you what, they're both holding on to it. But we told them, Zilu Plugu, go out there and divide it. But Nafka went out, and then a few minutes later, one of them came in holding it. Hi, Omar, and the guys holding it said, we're out of court. I do delay. He was made to me at the outside of the court. He said, I'm made, it's yours. But hi, Omar, bidomi garjanele. No. I wasn't made at all. He gave me money, and he said, well, give me money. He said he needs to tell us or something, and we agreed on a price, and he'll pay me. So we tell the other guy, no, we don't believe you. You're coming in here accusing him of being Goslin. Hashtem or get it, and now suddenly you trust him and you give him that. It's not normal behavior. That's exactly. A big machlek is showing. What happens if he came in and he said he grabbed it out of my hand? So most hold that in that case he'd be believed. They were arguing, we told him to divide it, and then suddenly one guy holds on to it. Another guy says he grabbed it out of my hand. He's stronger than me. We would believe him. So then Migi Mokamed him. If he said I rented it to him, I got him money, you say Migi Mokamed. Sorry, say Migi. He could have lied and said he grabbed it from me. Now that I said I rented it to him, you should believe him. It's a Migi Mokamed. We are so convinced that nobody's that stupid that you have a fight, you accuse him of being a ganef, and then suddenly 5 minutes later you trust him, and with no contract, no witnesses, nothing. Don't believe it. Or he boy said, take the price literally. One of them is holding on to it. The other guy is holding on to the fringes. Even though Sumcha said, Maman Hamut the Savi Chokim below Shvu, Sumcha that Maman Hamut the Savi Chokim without a Shvu, and even though we did say that our Mishnah could conform with Sumchas, that even Sumchas would agree in our case, the Mishnah with a Shvu. But Moide Sumchas, remember we said it's the morning, not the morning. Moide Sumchas, the Sircha Lab Klumra. Fringes is not like you're holding on to talus. So it's like one guy's holding on to the thing, the other guy, even though he's holding on to the fringes, it's nothing. Now, the Gemara starts this here. Im Tim Now, the fact that the Gemara says Im Tim seems to be flowing on from the Gemara here. There's a big machlekes to show him what's the case of the Gemara now. We're going to talk about a case as follows, where there's a dispute, and one of the parties in the dispute screams out, "You know what? I want to be makdish the talus." Now I want to be makdish. I'm making it hegdish right now. I'm consecrating it. Now, if we just had a chakira, if one guy grabbed it in front of us, what happens? We didn't answer that question. So according to Rashi, the Gemara is continuing in the same flow. We're talking about a case of shasak ulabasayv tzavach. The question we had before, no, but if the guy was quiet and was made completely the way the Rashi the Gemara, no question. If he makes a hegdish, he makes a hegdish. If he screamed, afterwards, nothing to talk about. It's a hegdish. It's a hegdish. But if but if he was quiet and then he screamed and we remained with the suffix. So it depends how we resolve that suffix. That's how Rashi learns this whole Gemara. Many are showing the Gemara, no, even if he was totally quiet and he was moida, but he's still holding on to it. And the other guy's not holding on to the whole thing. So this guy was toikif, he was toikif for the whole thing, and the other guy was quiet the whole time. And he made it, the other time I was talking about a case where not talk for just them, they were holding on to it. Both of them were holding on to it. And what happens if he made it hegdish while they're holding on to it? Another guy didn't say anything. He made it hegdish. You're holding on to half, I'm holding on to half. And I said, the whole towel should be hegdish. And you were quiet. So they become Kaddish now. But we'll continue the way it actually is. If you want to say, if the outcome of the previous question will be, that if someone grabs it in front of us, we just take it right back from him because it's nothing, then Hegdesh Medash, he may Hegdesh also meaningless. That means he has no right over it, so what he can give it to Hegdesh. But if you can tell me that if you're going to resolve the previous question that if he grabs it, Taka would have been his. But instead of grabbing, he said, no, I'm making it Hegdish. And what's the shayla then? But Hegdesh, like talking about, Kivan da Amamah, we have a rule. Just words donating something to Hegdish is tantamount to me physically taking something and giving it to another person, physically. And if we're saying that if the outcome is that it's a good kifa, then if he made a Hegdish, what would it then be? Do we say commanded talk for them? Do we say, well, no different than if you were grabbed it, so it should be hegdish. The fact is he wasn't taken it yet. Now we have Rabbi Yochanan says that if somebody stole an object from Reuben, Shimon stole from Reuben, and the Reuben decides to make it hegdish, he cannot make it hegdish, not in the shus. So over here, the person, one person wants to make the whole thing hegdish. Let's say he could have grabbed it, but the fact is it's not in his shus. So how can it be makdish? The fact is the nigel owns it 100%, but because he's not in his shus, because the guy is holding on to it, he cannot be makdish. So why over here? What's the shayla? Let's say the guy was quiet, but he's still holding on to it. So how can my hegdish? It's not my shusi. It's not my shus. So Taisus asks the question, and Taisus answers that over here is different because the moment the guy was quiet and he's made it, it's as if he's no longer a ganef. He's holding it on for you, so therefore it's as if it's in your shus. So the Tzos has a whole arichis that is actually a machlekes the Bava Metzia and the Ramban. If a ganef decides to do tshuva, and the nigniv, just in the Baba Kama, the fourth pedic, the ganef decides to do tshuva, and the nigniv then makes it hegdish. What's it then? The Bava Metzia says, well, the ganef, the moment he decides to do tshuva, he's holding it for the nigniv, so therefore the shusai. The Ramban says no. The ganef has he becomes a shamer. And the Ramban says no. Remember, to become a gazan, you have to make kinyonim. Those kinyonim obstruct or prevent the nigniv from being totally b'shusa until the ganef physically gives it back.
So does the nigniv have to make another kinyan?
Yeah, 100%. According to the Ramban, yes. So that would be the machlek. Yeah. So therefore, there'll be the machlekes of the Ramban and the Bava Metzia. But others say no, or maybe perhaps no. You can think of a number of reasons why no. That maybe has nothing to do with the Ramban. You know why? Because over here, even according to the Ramban, because the nigniv here is actually holding on to half the talus. The nigniv here, the other guy, is holding on to half the talus. The moment the ganav is moida, it's as if the nigniv now holds on the whole talus. Over there, in the case of the Ramban, the nigniv is at home, the ganav is wherever he is, and the ganav says, no, I'm going to do tshuva and give it back to him. There's kinyanim that the ganav has. But over here, because the nigniv is holding on half the talus, the moment the ganav is quiet, that means he's moida, that it's yours, and I'm giving it back to you, then the nigniv is holding on, becomes like he's holding on the whole talus. But it's much more b'shusay than the case where it's over there. So maybe the Ramban here wouldn't argue and would agree that it works. Anyway, that's the question. The Gemara Toshmak coming here. There was a bathhouse, a famous bathhouse. Two people were arguing on each one says it's mine. One of them jumped up and decided to make it hegdish. all the rabbis stopped going there. The question is, did it become Hegdish or not? Remember, there's a dispute. Did it become Hegdish or not? Now, so and born bring an eye from here to our exact same story of us. Two people holding a talent. Yes, they don't know the outcome of this answer. The Gemara. What happened? Two people holding a talent got made it hegdish. And now, why don't we just say simply? Maybe they all hold that. Even if you hold that it's not hegdish, but at least his half becomes hegdish. Because what happens? What's the outcome of two people holding on a talus? Each one gets half. So you can make your half hegdish. So maybe because half the bathhouse is hegdish, they don't want to go in. Nothing to do with not that the entire bathhouse became hegdish. How do we try to resolve it from this bathhouse story? Because we had a machlekes in the Dorim with two shutrim shenodru zeh mezeh in Hashutuvim Lezman Yaakov the Chachamim, and Rabbi Lezman Yaakov says that. And Rabbi Yaakov says clearly that when we had a machlekes, Rabbanan say you cannot walk. Neither of them can walk on because half is hegdish, which half is yours. Rabbi Yaakov says no, you can definitely walk on because you can always say I am walking on the property of the one that's not hegdish, and even a stranger can walk on. Say I'm walking on the side that's not hegdish. So same way here, they would have gone. They would have gone. Says another question that everybody asks is, what about, we know that Hegdish Shavim Mana Mechala Pruta. Why don't they just take a Pruta cent and say, you know what, the Hegdish of this bathhouse we're transferring to this Pruta, and therefore it's no longer Kaddish. So you all generally answer, because you can only do that, the owner is the only one who could do that willingly. Here, the whole reason why I made Hegdish is he doesn't want anyone, he says, not only you can have it, I want anyone to enjoy this bathhouse until we resolve this dispute or whatever. And then I'll be paid from Hegdish. Anyway, so what happened was, do me a favor. When you go visit your friend in the city of Kfari, ask him what the halach is in this case. This is our question. Two people holding on. On the way there, he stopped off a surah, and there he met Rav Hamnuna, and they had this discussion. And the Mishnah goes as follows: Sufik the chaydes, an animal gave birth to the calf, which the first Sufik is the firstborn. Because maybe the animal already miscarried before. The question is what was, and then the fetus got disappeared, so we couldn't determine whether there was a form in that thing. So therefore, this is no longer a b'chor, it's not the firstborn anymore, or the first thing was just maya b'alma, just water and nothing, and therefore this is the firstborn, and so a b'chor, so Sufik b'chor. Make a difference regardless of the firstborn of an animal, firstborn of a person, whether it's the kosher animals that need a b'chor, or whether it's a donkey, a pet, and the firstborn donkey also is kodesh. So what happens? Now there's two. We understood right now because we don't spell it out. It depends where the animal is sitting right now. But what happens? You have a firstborn. You take the firstborn if it's a kosher animal, and you give it to the kohen. The kohen brings it up as a shlamim, unless it has a flaw, it has a mum, a defect. If it's for a donkey, you redeem it for a sheep, and that sheep does not have exactly. It belongs to the kohen, but it's not kodesh. It's not kodesh. So now, wherever it is, in other words, if it's still sitting by the Yisrael and the kohen says, "Hey, give me the b'chor, prove it as a b'chor."
You say the hektish has to be right,
or not hektish kohen. The kohen has to bring it out. Take it. If the kohen grabbed it and now it's sitting in the kohen's possession, and the Yisrael wants it back, the Yisrael has to prove that this is not a b'chor. Wherever it is, the other party has to bring a raya. Because we don't know. The Tanya, we learned that even if it's sitting by the Yisrael, and the kohen has to prove it, so it's not kodesh. Wherever it is, it's still treated as if it's us, as if it's kodesh. So what do we see from here? Even though it's sitting by the Yisrael, because if the kohen would have grabbed it, it would have been a good grabbing. It's as if the kohen made it hegdish, and therefore it's kodesh. You asked the question if Tokva, if I grab it, it belongs to me. The kohen, if you grab it, it belongs to the kohen. And you asked the question if Hegdish, Tokva, if you made a hegdish without grabbing it, what happens? See, clear here. We treat it like a b'chor, even though the kohen lepoil didn't grab it. You just said here that if a kohen grabbed it, we don't take it away from him. And we're learning right now it goes both ways. The chiloi Tokva, the kohen did not grab it, yet to tell me it's still sitting by the Yisrael. It's still kodesh, as if the kohen made a kodesh. Oh, Malay Rabba said, Hamnuna, what are you comparing? Our question is, if a guy unilaterally decides to make a kodesh, here the Eibishter made a kodesh. It's something that Taylor. Amalei Rabba. Kedushas b'chor ka'amrit. You bring a raya from a case where I made the bathhouse kodesh. or the case now going to the Talus Kodesh, and you want to say, well, even though you didn't grab it, you have a right to make Kodesh from B'chayr. I can even argue that if you take it from the Kohen has no rights in this animal. But because of something he says, the Gdusha B'maleh is shiny. It's different because Gdusha B'maleh is different. That you have to treat a Kodesh. Amalei. And obviously, Rabbi Nuna wasn't concerned about that at all. He felt there's no difference between the two, because maybe maybe the argument is the machlekes the Rambam and the Rashba, if a suffix mahatayr is mahatayr l'chumra midrabanan l'chumra, and Rabbi learned that a suffix mahatayr l'chumra. So the fact that we treat the animal like a kohen has nothing to do with the rights of the kohen. The kohen has no rights in this animal, and yet because we don't know if this is a kohen or not, so mahatayr l'chumra. Mashenke Rabbi Nuna learned that suffix mahatayr is only midrabanan l'chumra, and in this case over here, because the kohen has no rights, if even the kohen grabbed it, take it away from him, maybe in this case over here, it's as if we treat it, we follow the chazaka that it was before previously. It was not while the animal's inside the mother's womb, it's chulin. Every animal doesn't become a chayt till it's born, petzerechem. So therefore, go to chazaka and we say it's mutter. I'll bring a raya. The kohen has no rights to this animal. What right? Because we have a rule, hasfeikis nechnosin ladir. If you have, let's say, a suffix, we'll see if you're talking about a suffix of petrachamid. We're talking about you're redeeming a donkey, and then you have a seh that you redeem the donkey with. Now that seh has no kedusha, and by separating the seh, now you can use this chamer. Otherwise, you got to kill the chamer. You can use this chamer, and the din is you don't have to give it at all to the kohen because it makes a raya. Let the kohen prove that this is from a petach chamer. We're talking about a suffix. We're not sure the chamer already gave birth before. It miscarried. We don't know what the status of that animal was. Now, what do you do with the sheep? The sheep belongs to the Yisrael, belongs to the owner, and he has to give ma'aseh beheiman like any other sheep he has. So what happens if a kohen has a number of what do you call it? A kohen has a number of what do you call it? So this Yisrael now has all of these sheep that he yashed from his grandfather kohen. Has all of these sheep there, and he should use the sheep for ma'aseh. Now these sheep are a suffix. If they are actually, what are you supposed to do with a proper petach hamor? You give it to a kohen. It's not holy, but give it to a kohen. Here's the suffix. Whether this, when you separate the sheep, we're not sure if the sheep actually belongs to a kohen. You have to give it to a kohen or not. And we say, how much chalav? Now, if you're going to say that, what do you say? What are you going to say? That maybe the kohen takva has a right to it. So the Rabbah said the kohen has no rights to it. Now, Rabbi Nuna was saying if the kohen would have grabbed it, he could keep it. So here there's a din as follows, and you'll see the only way to explain this din is we follow Rabbah, the kohen has no rights to it. But if we follow Rabbi Nuna, the kohen has rights to it, we got a problem, and that is as follows. As fake is you can use these fakers and count them as part of your thing, and even though they come out to number 10, and you'll be given, and you'll say this is ma'aseh behema, nevertheless, it belongs to the Yisrael. Now the talk for kohen aim it to the other. If you tell me the kohen has rights to it, if he would have grabbed it, it belongs to him. Even if he didn't grab it, he has rights to it. How can you use this as part of your ma'aseh? Let's say this sheep turns out to be number 10, and there's a 50% chance that this sheep belongs to a kohen. I am using someone else's property to pot to my other 9 animals here, and from ma'aseh, because this is number 10. How can you do that? Unless you learn there's no right. The kohen has 0 rights to this animal, and that's why you can use it. Abaye said, even though Rabbah, in principle, you might be right, but this raya of Hanan you brought is not a raya. This doesn't really support you. You want to know how can you use the sheep? Maybe it belongs to a kohen. How can you use? I'll tell you what we're talking about here. I'm talking about a case. The guy has 9 sheep, and this is number 10. So in Manushech, there's no problem there. The Manushech. If a taka belongs to a kohen, which means that you have no right to use it. So how many sheep do you have? 9. 9 is a chayv ma'aseh. There's no problem. Sorry, if it does not belong to a kohen, if it does not belong to a kohen, so then you chayv ma'aseh. So this is number 10, no problem. Labar suninu. But if it belongs to a kohen, then how many sheep do you have that are chayv tisha? Labar suninu. 9 does not chayv ma'aseh anyway, regardless. So then Abaye said, La Milsa doesn't have that often. Abaye said, this thing that I jumped in over here and I asked a question and I said, you have no raya? Maybe I'm wrong. This fake labar surya. If there's any doubt that this sheep belongs to a kohen and is a suffix, is b'chal not shaykh the whole inyan of ma'aser. That nan, we learned in a Mishnah, kafat echa ben amenuyin l'toich. The din is once you counted it, you can and jumps back in, you cannot count it again because it says the pasuk kol asher yaver, anything that will cross tachas hashavet. Not if it already jumped, if it already was counted before, you can't count it again. And what happens is if one of the sheep jump back in, all the ones that left already are 100% good, and all the ones that are behind are also potter because there's a suffix that maybe you're going to count one sheep twice. They're all potter. Now, if you're going to hold that a suffix, you still give ma'aser. Let's continue giving ma'aser and manashich, and each time say this. And let's say it turns out to be this animal number 10. If these sheep here were not for the ones that were counted before, they're all for the first time, then shapim ma'aser. Also good and fine. If one of the sheep that jumped back in, and this number here, who nifted b'minyan, we have a concept that if you started counting sheep properly, you had 10 sheep in your barn, and you start counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you counted number 7, one of the remaining sheep died. You no longer have 10, you only have 9. The thing is that whatever went out is kosher. Why? Because minyan haro, at the time when you counted it, it was suitable to be turned into ma'aser, and you're potter. So l'chayda over here also, when you if it turned out to be when you were counting, there was plenty of sheep. It was supposed to be ma'aser. Turned out to be that one of the sheep now in that group is counted a second time. So if it does not, if it's not from the one that you'll count the second time, everything's good. And if it was at the time when you started counting everything, you didn't know, so everything was done minyan haro. The rest of the sheep takabul chayiv. So you'd be potter. So why don't you just continue counting? Minyan haro potter. You can because it's always a suffix. The whole 1,000 sheep there's a suffix. They're all potter. Now, before we move on, actually, let's move on and I'll tell you the famous question here. What do you tell me? We cannot give. You know why you're not chayiv in this ma'aser b'manashech? Because asidi vaday. In order to give ma'aser, it has to be 100% ma'aser, and not by a suffix. And here, constantly be a suffix. Maybe it belongs to the kohen, maybe it belongs to the kohen. So now, first of all, Taste asked the famous question. We have a rule, you always follow the rabbi. One sheep falls into 1,000 sheep and you make the whole potter. There's one in 1,000.
Like Bava
Yeah, Bava. You're going to tell me, it's a double chashuv or double minyan. All of those rules are only midrabanan. And we're not talking about mahatayif. You're chayiv ma'aser. So what's going on here? And Tosha remains the question. In fact, this is very interesting. This whole Gemara, there are 4 Toshos before. Each Toshos remains the question of the Gemara. He doesn't understand the whole Gemara. And that in itself tells you how difficult the Gemara is. Toshos has 4 questions in a row. He doesn't understand the Gemara. So anyway, on this question, the Rosh comes along and makes a famous chiddush. The Rosh comes along and says, from here you have to say that a roiv is always a suffix. Even though the halach is you follow roiv, it's still not 100%. Why? Because every roiv has a miyat that counters it. So therefore, maybe it's the miyat. How can say vaday? And that's why he says here, you can't say bottle baroy because it's into the asidi vaday suffix. It's a suffix. Even if you follow laws of roiv, there's a suffix here, which opens up a Pandora's box. So all the dinim of roiv, for example, how do you know that your father is your father? We'll have more chulin if you're out there, because the roiv is exactly only a roiv. But if you tell a roiv is a suffix, how do you kill a kid for cursing his father or smacking his father? It's only a roiv. Every roiv is a suffix, and it goes on and on and on and on. Famous Rush, everyone talks about. The other thing that big discussion is when something is the difference between bottle the roiv, for example, or achirab. You have 3 pieces of meat here, and 2 of them are kosher, 1 of them is treif. If you follow the raiv, you're allowed to eat them all, because each one is you go after the raiv. It's not bottle raiv, we go after the rabbin. When a piece of treif of flesh falls into a heter, it's bottle b'shishin. It is bottle. What happens when something is bottle? So if you, for example, if Isa falls into heter, and you ate the entire thing, there's a kazayis of treif that fell inside a pot of 61 kazaysim of kosher, and you ate 62 kazaysim. Are you going to get malchus because you definitely ate a kazayis of treif? No. Because the Easter become heter. What about the other way around? Oh, what about the other way around? If heter falls into Issa, so you're not allowed to eat it, right? One kazayas of heter fell into let's say I don't know, 3 kazayisim of Issa, and you ate 1 kazayas of that, and you were warned. There's treifa. Will you get malchus because you ate a kazayas? Does the heter now become Issa or not? What happened? Big machlek is a shame. Actually, machlek tastes and pchayers is wachim. Big machlek is a shame. From the fact that Taisa asked the question, should be bottled beroiv. I mean, Taisa clearly, and we're talking about heter. This is heter. This doesn't need mice anymore. Should be bottled beroiv the Isa because they need mice. That means Taisa clearly that the heter becomes asa. So this is one of the proofs they bring. Taisa holds that the heter becomes asa. Masha'en Kain, the answer. That's what Taisa's question is, and he remains the question. He doesn't answer this question. But again, those who hold that the heter does not become Issa, Taisa's question is not a question. The fact that there's still
you found a piece of meat and there's 9 butchers.
That's not Bakl Baroy. That's That's a very different rule. When you, yeah, exactly. So here as well, it's a very interesting thing. If the heter becomes usher when it's there or not, and the question is, how do we understand? If everything in the world mutter and Isser is a layer on top of that, or everything is usher and heter is a layer on top of that? How does we understand the whole idea of heter? The whole world, everything is kosher, unless you know for otherwise, or everything is treif unless you know otherwise. It used to be, if you remember, when we were growing up, everything was kosher until we knew that for sure it was usher. That is a little bit different. Okay, let's just finishing Marty, yeah? But you have to do the test.
You could easily tell the 3 pieces of meat, give a schmeck, and which one you really want to eat.
Exactly. Let's just go back to the Bryce. You said a suffix there. What's a suffix here? What exactly is a suffix here? Each animal is a suffix. We talk about a normal, let's say a lamb, a sheep, the firstborn. If we're talking about that the fake is going to deer to give mice, it says that you should take an animal and make it kodesh. Now, if it's a b'chayr, there's nothing to talk about. There's nothing. No mice by a b'chayr. Where does mice come in here? Asfekis, it says asfekis close to ladir. If it's suffix, you bring it in and you give mice. You don't give mice from something which is already holy, which is already in itself is kodesh. And the suffix pidyon pechem. We're talking about an animal that's not kodesh. It's an animal that you use to redeem the donkey. And even if it's been a vadai, the sheep does not become kodesh. You know, the sheep does not become. You have to give it to a kohen. It's memoina shel kohen, but it itself is not holy, and therefore you have to give ma'aser. If a yid has, let's say, 10 different donkeys, each one is a question of whether the donkey that was born is the firstborn or not. What he does is mafrish alei and asodas here, and he separates 10 sheep. Uma'asan gives ma'aser, but behein shalai. Normally you have to give it to a kohen. Yeah, you can keep it, but there's no kedusha here. No kedusha. And then tomorrow we'll conclude the Gemara. Takes ask a question here, for example, he doesn't understand. We know the din is you can give 1 sheep for as many donkeys as you want. Why in the world are you separating 10 different sheep? Why are you separating 10 different sheep? Because take the first line, after lane. And again, Taisa remains the question, no answer. He has 3 questions in this Gemara. First of all, he says, the se'echad poite kama pitach hamaydim. 1 sheep can be pata so many. Umat tzorich hasodas. What are you tenfold? Unless you can learn that each donkey happened, he right away set aside a sheep. It wasn't that in one go, okay, let me collect for my donkeys. Okay, I got to separate. Maybe this guy was very frum. As soon as he had a mice with a donkey, he separated a sheep. Another donkey a week later, another donkey a week later. Maybe that's what happened over here. Anyway.
He must have a lot of donkeys because you know what it means to get a better.
Rashi actually says in the first wide line and in the mid wide line, Rashi said it's talking about here that there's a coin that had this guy Yashin from his grandfather, a Yisrael, and his grandfather had all these things. So the way Rashi learns is the grandfather left behind 10 donkeys, and now the coin and the grandson goes ahead and each one he separates the thing. So that's pshat. Then it all happened in one go. Why 10 sheep? Why not just 1?